Welcome back, everyone. It's episode 18 of season one of The Review. This is cbbreviews.com's flagship podcast. My name is Brendon Hodges. I'm your host and have been for the majority of this season. Although another man who's played host this year will be on later today. The boss man is back. And we'll talk to him a little bit later. He is a very special shirt on. It's actually a very special episode for him as well, because it's a bookend to how this podcast really started. If you remember episode one, the backgrounds were a little bit different. I believe Matt had a Christmas tree in his, and I had a palm tree in mine, or at least more than one palm tree because I was in Florida at the time. But like I said, he'll be joining us in just a few minutes, that being Matt Mlodzinski, the boss man, who all of us have a very large love-hate relationship with here. We'll be discussing that a little bit later as well. For now, though, let's head into my starting five. Nothing argumentative today. Because I want to go into why we call this podcast The Review. And I think you guys know that because we review a lot of things, whether it's college basketball over the course of a week or weekend, our opinions on why Kentucky was terrible this year. Sorry, Steve Kirk. Our opinions on why Ohio State is not a national championship contender perennially. Sorry, Sam Bass. And various other things like why Matt hasn't fired all of us yet. And that's no offense to him, because I think the record right now is 5 times in a season somebody's mentioned, I don't want to say something because Matt Mlodzinski will fire me. And no one gets paid because they're all interns. But it's The Review, and we review a bunch of stuff, which is the purpose of this episode. We're going to go back to the very beginning of this podcast. Matt Mlodzinski was on. He was our first writer to come on, and it made sense because he was the founder and he was the guy who got me into putting this podcast together to revive it, revitalize it, resurrect it, if you would allow that as a word. He's a big Christianity, Catholicism guy, so he likes that word a lot too. But we're going to be going over some of his judgments this year, and we're going to enjoy it when he's right, but we're also going to really enjoy it when he admits that he's wrong. And with that, we'll go ahead and bring in the man, the myth, the legend, Matt Mlodzinski, who's wearing a very special shirt today. He just put it on, actually, before we started recording today. Matt, if you want to go ahead and show that shirt off, there's a very special occasion for us Syracuse grad students today.
Beat Duke.
Yes, it is
Baby.
Syracuse v. Duke today. And I don't know if we have that in the picks. I don't know if we have that in the pick segment today because it's not as big a game as some other ones in the duration of the week. But you never know. But so Matt and I were talking actually on Saturday night. We were watching Georgetown's beatdown of Matt's Seton Hall Pirates. It was actually a pretty close game for a while, and then unfortunately, like Matt tends to do in the three-point play, Seton Hall choked. And he shakes his head at that because he is a Syracuse fan first, but he is insufferable when it comes to the boys in blue. But we're going to go back to last fall. I think this was early December when this podcast actually started, and we talked about your predictions from that first episode. And as I pull these up here, it was very interesting how we went about doing this. I think we only predicted the Power Six, if I am correct about that, Matt. I'm still pulling it up at the moment, but I'll let you go ahead and take the floor here for our first segment of the day. So we're going to review, obviously, your predictions from the fall, starting with how the conferences stand up against each other. I believe you had the Big East. I don't remember who you had on top, but let's start with how you had the conferences standing against each other in November, December, and where they stand now.
Yeah. I think that the Big Ten has always kind of been up near the top. I still have the Big Ten at the top. You see in the top 25 right now, I mean, really in the top 10, you've got Michigan, Illinois, and Ohio State all playing for 1 seeds at this point in the season. Iowa can definitely get up to a 2 seed. They're probably at least a 3 right now, if not a 2. And then you've got other teams as well. Maryland's been on a hot streak. Michigan State and Indiana haven't been as good as they were maybe projected to, but you've got a team like Purdue that's played better than people projected them to. So you just have this great conference top to bottom. I mean, other than Nebraska, pretty much any team can beat any team. Penn State is a quadrant one team. If a team beats Penn State, they get a Q1 win. Penn State is second to last in the conference. And I think that just goes to show how good the Big Ten is. I move on to the Big 12 with my number two. Obviously, you've got Baylor. When you have a team with their caliber, you have to put the conference up there. And you've got Texas, Oklahoma, and Texas Tech and West Virginia, who are all in plays for a 4 seed or better. And that, again, shows the strength of this conference because there is an unsaid rule in the NCAA tournament that seed lines 1 through 4, each region, you're only supposed to have one team from each conference. So in other words, if you have a Big Ten team as a 1 seed, you can't have a Big Ten team as the 2 through 4 in that region. You have to wait until they get the 5 seed. But if a conference overwhelmingly they say, look, like we can't move this team down to a 5. They have to be a 4 or they have to be a 3. Then they'll make that exception. And this year they might make that exception. There's a very good chance that you get 5 Big 12 teams in those first 4 seed lines. I mean, even the Big 10 might even have a chance at that. Then I think it gets a little dicey after that. You've obviously got the SEC, the Pac-12, the Big East, and the ACC. I'm hesitant about this, but I might put the SEC. I'm going to pencil them in at number 3. I think you've got teams like Arkansas and LSU that have really – the SEC was – I had them worse than the A-10 at the beginning of the season. But because of Arkansas and LSU coming on, and I know Tennessee and Missouri haven't really played that well. Florida's also a decent team. I think now you've got a little bit of those teams that weren't playing so well. They're now actually playing better and getting more wins. And that's not even without saying Alabama, who's the best team in the SEC. They're, I think, still in play for maybe a 2 seed. I mean, if they win out, they could maybe even get over one of those Big Ten teams for the final 1 seed. And I've got the SEC in at number 3. That's where I kind of struggle. And I go with the Big East at 4, mainly for the reason that they have a team in Villanova that is a sure Final Four contender. Creighton's also a team that is most likely right now on the 4 or 5 seed line. And then you've got between Seton Hall, Xavier, UConn, and St. John's, at least 2 of those 4 will definitely be in. And I think you might see 3 of those 4. All 4 might be a stretch just because all 4 of them are kind of in that 9 seed to bubble line. But just because of that Villanova, like a Final Four contender and then a good amount of teams that should be in, I have them at 4. I have the ACC at 5. And that's because Florida State and Virginia, neither of them to me is a Final Four contender right now. I think that's where they're a step below the ACC. I think both those teams can make Sweet 16, Elite 8 runs, but I haven't seen enough to put them in the Final Four. I know Virginia Tech's probably better than the Big East third best team, but after them, you got North Carolina and Clemson, and you don't really know where else past them. Louisville just got blown out by UNC, so you can't really trust them as much. And then I've got the Pac-12 at 6, but it's a good 6 because you've got USC, Oregon, and UCLA that are very, very good. The Pac-12 is super competitive. I mean, I could put them in at number 4, but really just the fact that they don't even have a team right now that you could be like, yeah, they should for sure be a 4 seed or better. I mean, even USC, I probably still got as a 5 right now just because of their lack of Q1 wins. And when it goes down the line, you're not sure about anyone else. But if you talk about just the meat of the Pac-12, between USC, UCLA, Oregon, Colorado, Stanford, and even though Arizona can't make the tournament this year, they've got 6 really good teams that no one would like to play on their schedule. And then after that, I think you still have to put the Atlantic 10 in conversation for a good conference. The Mountain West, I think, will get 3 teams in. And you even have to talk about the Missouri Valley a little bit. People are paying attention to that conference, and I'm sure I'm missing some, but that's kind of my ranking.
I'm really pressing for those 2 teams at the top of the Missouri Valley to get in because they deserve it. Loyola and Drake both deserve to be in. Since we're running low on time here in the first block of this episode, though, we're going to just do this like a ranking of like, I'm going to ask you to describe in one word your conference champion predictions from each of the conferences I have listed here from our first episode. Starting with the ACC, you said Virginia. I would say it's a solid bet at this point.
I'm going to take Florida State at the moment just because they beat Virginia the last time they played.
Are you going regular season
I'm going
champions or tournament champions?
tournament champion.
Okay. Okay. We're on the same
Um,
page here.
yeah, I'm going tournament champion. I just think that right now, you could go with either of them. They'd both be a good pick. I think that Virginia's going to turn it around, but just with the 2 straight losses, I'm going with Florida State at the moment.
Well, so much for one-word answers. I was just looking for like, yeah, great pick, or God, that was terrible. And then you can explain a little bit afterwards. So for the Big Ten, you had Iowa, and this was kind of a trap because we talked about Luka Garza being the like basically preseason and consensus best like Wooden Award winner, and he's going to win it because the man's been unstoppable. Minus 1 game where he only scored 8, but Iowa was your pick in the Big Ten.
I'm going to roll with Iowa again. They've yet to play Michigan. They play Michigan for the first time this week. They lost to Ohio State by 4, and they lost to Illinois by 5. Both of those games were really close, so I'm not going to destroy them for those losses. So I'm going with Iowa still.
Your Big 12 pick was Ariel Putterman's Kansas Jayhawks.
Yeah. And while I still think that Kansas can win the Big 12, I still think they can at least get to the semifinals. I got to go with Baylor.
But yeah, that's fair enough. They're still undefeated. I would too. In the Big East, you had Villanova, and I know it pained you to say it, but you were pretty much right on that one as well.
Yeah, not changing that pick.
In the Pac-12, you had Oregon. USC and UCLA came out and surprised some people this year. And your dark horse, the Sun Devils, kind of left you hanging out to dry.
I'm sticking with Oregon. They've now won 5 straight, including wins against Arizona and Colorado. They've got USC tonight.
That's one of our picks today, and it's a big game to pick, especially for a Monday. And then finally, your SEC pick was Florida. Now, obviously, losing Keontae Johnson really early in the season hurts them in that regard, but the SEC was just topsy-turvy this year. You have Alabama at the top, and you had teams that no one expected to do anything doing a lot.
I think I might even keep Florida as my dark horse just because they've actually played decent in the past couple of games. I got it up right now. They had a 4-game winning streak. They've lost 2 of 3, but they had a couple postponed in between there. But I'll keep them as a dark horse, but I'll slide in Alabama as my pick right now.
Well, there you have it, guys. Matt Mlodzinski didn't say he was wrong a lot, but he said he was wrong at least a little bit. We'll see how wrong he is coming up here in the next couple blocks with a 3-point play, as well as his best and worst of the weekend. And that's still to come as well. Coming up next, though, stories from the weekend that were pretty big, along with our second topic of the day. Stay with us. This is The Review. Back on The Review, the B block stands for the Brendon block in my eyes, not in really anybody else's eyes. We'll call it the basketball block because it's easy, it's simple, and that's what we do. We're gonna hit the stories since we last saw you. Really big stories in college basketball this weekend, including one that was likened to a boxing match. That's the last one, though. We'll get to the first. Got some good news after we finished recording on Friday, and I didn't see it until the day after because I don't start prepping for Monday's episodes until Saturday morning. But NCAA women's basketball tournament, they're going to have fans. Not at all the games, but at least from the Sweet 16 and moving on. Now, all those games are going to be in the Alamo Dome. Capacity set at 17%, which isn't a lot, but at least it's something. And now the downside for the casual fan, probably not going to be able to go. Sorry, Matt. I know you're a big UConn women's basketball fan because you're a bandwagoner, and that's just how you roll. Anyway, that percentage, though, will include the actual participants, meaning the players, family members of each team, student athletes, and coaches, and then essential staff and fans as well. The NCAA hasn't said what that exact number for capacity would be in the Alamo Dome, but more to come on that. We also talked about this with the men's tournament. They will allow at least a certain capacity. It's most of the games, if not all of them. But it's awesome to see that there will be fans in San Antonio as well. Next up, though, my like third or fourth team that I like a lot, the Minnesota Golden Gophers. They are, as of me writing this reader, they were part of Joe Lunardi's first 4 out. And their path just got a lot harder. Gabe Kalsher, great shooter, great defender, out for the next 3 to 4 weeks with a broken finger on his shooting hand. Now, Coach Richard Pitino said that Kalsher was having surgery on Friday to repair that fracture, and it occurred in practice on Tuesday when the ball hit his right hand at a bad angle. Now, upon first glance, it seems as though Kalsher would be able to return in time for the NCAA tournament, but that it remains to be seen if Minnesota would actually make the NCAA tournament. Matt, I'll defer to you on that. Will my third or fourth team to like, the Golden Gophers, make the tourney?
I think right now, because of teams like VCU, Wichita State, and St. Bonaventure from other pretty good conferences, um, some of these teams that are on the bubble with not the best conference records are starting to get a little bit scared. I think that if you asked me a week ago, I'd still have Minnesota in, but they've now lost 6 of their last 8 games. Those include 2 against Maryland, Indiana, Rutgers, Purdue, and Illinois. And the Illinois one was by over 30 points. And I just think that, and again, they had a win over Purdue too. So I guess you can't count the Purdue one as much because they split that. But those aren't, it's not like they're losing to Michigan, Ohio State, and Iowa. They're losing to a lot of teams that they're relatively comparing against. Like it's kind of more of a neutral game. And they don't have a whole lot of ways to make it up. Their final 4 games are Northwestern, Nebraska, Penn State, and Rutgers. Toughest game right there is an away game at Penn State. Even the home game at Rutgers won't. I mean, that could be whoever wins that game gets in because Rutgers hasn't been playing well either. I know that Minnesota's blowout win over Michigan helps. They blew out Ohio State. They beat Iowa. When you take all that into consideration, they have as good. Those 3 wins are as good as anyone in the country. But those all happened in the first half of the season. And sometimes when you look at a bubble team and you look at how they've recently played, that can come to hurt them. And I think it has because even with those wins, 6-10 in conference is doing no favors.
And then finally, like I said, there's a game was likened to a boxing match this weekend, and we all know which one it was. And it was a doozy. This was a heck of a game, guys. Michigan, Ohio State, top 5 teams fighting for number 1 seeds. And in my opinion, will probably both still be number 1 seeds by the time Selection Sunday comes around, even though Ohio State lost this game. Uh, it felt like a Final Four game. Like it was just great shooting, threes whenever a team needed it, physical play in the paint, no mistakes late really at all. And really it was the entire game was great. The second half was a gem. 6 ties in the second half, lead changes all over the place. Wolverines end up pulling away, and it was a game that's eventually going to loom large because of what Matt said. You're not going to see 2 teams from the same conference in the first 4 seed lines all that often in the same region, that is. So I think it's fair to ask where these 2 teams will end up by the time Selection Sunday comes around.
I think there's a lot that can still change. I think if the season ended today, Michigan's obviously a 1 seed. I think I'll slot Illinois ahead of Ohio State for the moment. I know Ohio State beat them on the road, but they play one more time, and that's March 6th. And I think because of that, I'll slot Illinois ahead. Also, Ohio State's last 3 games are Michigan State, Iowa, and Illinois. That's very, very tough. When you look at Michigan, they've got Michigan State twice, Iowa, Indiana, and Illinois. So I think Michigan's schedule has more games, but it just seems like they have more chances for easier wins there. And then you look at Illinois real quick, and excuse me as I'm clicking on the wrong team there to get Illinois back up. They've got easy games against Michigan State and Nebraska. They finished with Wisconsin, Michigan, and Ohio State. I still think Ohio State has the toughest schedule just because Illinois at least has that game against Nebraska and Wisconsin's not playing well. I will say away games against Wisconsin, Michigan, and Ohio State do not do Illinois any favors, but if they were to win 2 of those 3, I think they've got that final 1 seed.
Illinois, another team we were really high on at the beginning of the season that's kind of flown under the radar as of late. Those were the biggest stories in college hoops since we last saw you. Now back to the present, though, as we head on to our second and really final main topic of this episode. We are 1 week out from the start of mid-major conference tournaments. They start the first week of March, which is great because March Madness is fantastic. We're 2 weeks out, or give or take a few days, from Power 5 tournaments. And thus, that means we are 3 weeks out from Selection Sunday. 3 weeks away from the NCAA tournament, guys. It's huge. Now, that being said, not a lot of time for teams who are on the fringe of the field, on the bubble, to build up a resume to get in for an at-large bid. They'll have to hope they play well in their conference tournament to give a show to the committee, especially mid-major teams. But let's go ahead and do a case study, though. Matt Mlodzinski, I don't know how many teams you brought today, but which teams have the most work to do and have the most riding on these next 3 weeks?
And are these teams that do you want power conference teams, mid majors? What would you like?
Whatever you feel is special, dude. I have if I were to say something, I'd be like, I would just say Drake and Loyola Chicago should get in. So if you have them on your list, take them off because
I do
they
think they're
should
both
get
in. I'll just take a couple of conferences. I'll go in the ACC. I'm not going to take bubble teams because if I took bubble teams, I could have 40 teams right here. I'm going to take teams that I think right now they'd be a 9 or a 10 seed in, but that doesn't mean they're in. They still need another win or two. I think I'll start with North Carolina. They're 14-7, 8-5 in conference. They still need to finish the season strong for them to get in. In the A10, you've got St. Bonaventure, VCU, and St. Louis, who I think all have more than enough good chances to get in. All of them need to finish strong because there's also Davidson, Richmond, and Dayton. There's a lot of good teams here. So I think all of those 3 teams that I mentioned need to at least make the A10 semis and can't lose more than 1 in the rest of the regular season. In the Big East, I mean, it's really anyone but Villanova and Creighton. I think Seton Hall, Xavier, UConn, and St. John's all need to keep ending the season well. In the Big 12, it's Oklahoma State. I think every other team is good. I'd put Texas Tech there. I know that Texas Tech is a top 25 team, but they are 14-7 and 6-6 in conference. So while I think they're safely in, if they were to lose these last 2 against Oklahoma State and Texas, you'd all of a sudden have to think, okay, they are only 14-9 and under 500. So I think Texas Tech might want to win at least one of those last 2 games. The Big Ten, Maryland needs to keep winning. Rutgers needs to keep winning. Indiana definitely does. We talked about Minnesota. Sorry, I'm going conference by conference here. In the Mountain West, I see 3 of these following 4 teams getting in. It's Boise State, San Diego State, Colorado State, and Utah State. Utah State had a bad week, though, so that could only go to 2 of those teams. And right now, Boise State and San Diego State have the best chances, but they all need to keep winning. In the SEC, I'd like to see Missouri get another win here. I know, again, another team that's kind of fringe top 25, but not a lot keeping them in it as of late, and Florida as well. And in the Pac-12, Stanford, they're kind of a bubble team that needs to keep winning. Colorado, and then one last team would be BYU.
Well, there you have it, folks. If you are fans of any of those teams, be a little bit scared. We'll go ahead and take our second break of the day. Up next, we'll give our best and worst of the weekend, and we'll have a very special edition of our 3-point play, which Matt will hate me for. Anyway, we'll be right back. This is The Review. Back on The Review, best and worst of the weekend, coming up in just a sec. Brendon Hodges, along with the boss man, the myth, the legend, the owner of various Syracuse things that you can see in his background, along with the Tiger Woods poster. We'll talk a little bit more about those Syracuse things during our 3-point play. You'll see. Today is, it hasn't gotten to this point yet, but Matt Mlodzinski is going to rue the fact that he agreed to come on this episode. And it's because of this C block. And I don't really have a name for the C block. So I'm going to call it the crush block, as in I'm going to crush Matt Mlodzinski's dreams of winning the 3-point play, or at least pulling ahead of everybody. Again, for now, that we'll hit our best and worst of the weekend, and we all watch college basketball, or we at least pay attention to the aftermath, and we like things. Some things we're just like, ooh, that was bad. So Matt Mlodzinski, your best and worst of this last weekend.
Yeah, I think my best of this last weekend was Duke's ability to overcome the loss of Jalen Johnson. I think also from a Syracuse standpoint, Jim Boeheim saying that Duke was better without Jalen Johnson. Jay Bill is really ripping him for those comments, and Duke ends up winning the game. So I think Coach Boeheim kind of won that first little argument, if you want to call it that. Worst of the week, I'll go with USC. You lose to a team in Arizona that isn't eligible for the tournament. USC had won that game, and I think all of a sudden you've got to start talking about them more highly. But they lose that game, and you're like, okay. And I know that Arizona has nothing to lose, but that's my team that had a little bit to lose.
Oh, my best of the weekend. We'll look at Luka Garza becoming the all-time Iowa leading scorer this weekend. I
Hmm.
saw that this morning. Worst of the weekend, though, I'm going to go back to my Bellarmine University Knights. First year in D1, had 2 games postponed this weekend, which means, oh boy, bad things could happen next weekend when you play Liberty in your final 2 ASUN games. 2 games that will more likely than not decide who wins the ASUN regular season title. And when you can't go to the NCAA tournament in your first 4 years in D1, you might as well win your conference tournament when you get the chance. So, Bellarmine, we're pulling for you here. Even this man is starting to hop on the train because, like I said in the last segment, he's a bandwagoner and he only likes really good teams, and then Seton Hall. Anyway, those were our best and worst of the weekend. We'll head into my favorite segment now. It's the 3-point play. And Matt Mlodzinski has been answering the 3-point play questions off the record, like the ones that we've done recently. He was one of the guys with me and our buddy Dan Baldwin who did the new format for the 3-point play, where it's just one question, you have a bunch of choices, you name them in order, all that good stuff. We're going back to the regular format today, though, because I decided that I wanted to troll Matt here on his supposed college basketball knowledge. Right now, he's on top of the leaderboard, tied with Ariel Putterman with 7 points. Now, there. Well, I'll go over the rules real quick, then I'll cover all that. So, 3 questions, 1 point each equals a 3-point play. You know that, Matt. If you get at least 2 of them right, I'll give you a shot at the 4th question because I don't want to waste really good 4-point play questions. It just makes me mad when that happens. So, if you get at least 2 right, you can get the 4-point play. I hope you don't get 2 right, though, because it'll be that much sweeter for me to listen to live and for everybody else to listen to after the fact when I text them in the group chat that you just choked on a good topic for you. Now, keep in mind, you have that mulligan. We call it an assist now. So you have to say, I want to use the assist. You get 1. And that's also because of you, because you told me the quizzes were too easy with 2 of them. So sorry, you brought it upon yourself. Today, the assist will not turn a question into multiple choice, though. It will turn the question into a true or false question. Got that?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So, as I said, current standings in the 3-point play are like this. So, obviously, Matt Mlodzinski, Ariel Putterman on top of the leaderboard with 7 points each. The other 2 Matts in the Matt Cubed trio, Matt Carner and Matt Waldman, are tied at 5 right behind you guys. The man, Sam Bass, who I learned is a huge individual person, like in benches 225 at least 20 times at the combine, even though he's a baseball player, is there with 4. The UK superfan, Steve Kirk, with 3. And then Jordan Pardo, who for some reason just never came on again, has 1. So he's probably out of it at this point. There's a reason, though, that I say today's 3-point play is so special. And that's because Matt Mlodzinski finally made his return. He's manning up. He came back. He's not hiding behind his Seton Hall sweatshirts and that stupid Syracuse pillow pet. He's actually coming on to try and rebuild his lead and defend it. And it's been hard recently. And I think that's the only reason that he hasn't come back on, because he didn't want to embarrass himself with another 0 for 6 stretch that he had. Now, I want to make this announcement, and I'm going to tell everybody on the team to at least watch this C block of this episode. There's a little more at stake now with this season in terms of this trivia game, guys. It's going to end after the Final Four. And why do I say that? Our final episode will involve 4 people. It's not going to be it'll be a secondary episode off to the side of the actual season in review thing. But the final episode of season 1 of the review will be the 3-point play championship. Now, why do I say that? Because the top 4 right now have at least 5 points, and there are still people who can stay alive by coming on and doing well. It's also going to be really fun because it's going to be really hard, really hard. And you'll all be in the room at the same time. You'll have a whiteboard. You'll write your answers down. It's going to be great. And I'm going to be basing it off of another YouTube channel that does quizzes just like that. Now, that being said, Matt is the only one here today. So I decided to give him a fair shot at building up his lead with stuff that, like, usually it's stuff he doesn't know, but he just kind of guesses at. This stuff he's going to think he knows, but he's still going to choke. You want to know what today's topic is, Matt?
Is it Syracuse basketball?
It is not. It is the Seton Pirate.
Ooh.
Now, you're probably going to think this is going to be easy, but knowing me, you know it's not going to be easy.
It probably won't because I didn't know a lot about Seton Hall until I came to the school. I still think I'll be able to get one of these right, but hopefully I can get them all.
Okay. Well, so we're going to go ahead and start with this. And for anybody who's sitting in your apartment with you, just warn them that you may be screaming a lot today. Now, so Seton Hall, like every other team in the Division One, they play a lot of games against a lot of teams. But can you tell me who the Pirates have the most wins against and who they have the most losses against?
Wow. Okay. I gotta mark some down here. Who they have the most wins against, who they have the most losses against. Hmm. Who they have the most wins against. Gosh, this is not easy. I've got a couple teams that I'm writing down here. See, this is where you just wish that you remembered some of this stuff because we play certain teams, certain mid-major teams. We try to play every year, but we like how Syracuse plays Colgate every single year. Seton Hall doesn't really have that team. There's a couple Jersey teams they slot in and out. I know that St. Peter's and Wagner are two of them recently, but Seton Hall hasn't played St. Peter's in the past 3 or 4 years. I don't know if that really matters much, but it definitely has a play in it. Okay, I'm going to go the most wins against St. Peter's and the most losses. I was between UConn, Villanova, and Syracuse, but just the fact that UConn and Cuse left the conference and Villanova stayed in it. I know that Seton Hall's had success, but that's definitely made more losses. So St. Peter's with the most wins, Villanova with the most losses.
Was muted there. I'm kind of surprised, Matt, because you did get one of them right. And that was Villanova with the most losses. But you didn't stay in conference for the most wins. And while you still like it's Georgetown. Like you've beaten the team that your team just lost to the most.
Wow.
47 wins against Georgetown, 71 losses against Villanova. So unfortunately, you're over one, which doesn't surprise me at all because you've been on the downturn as of late in terms of this trivia thing. Anyway, so you know how they have those like at minimum, like say a quarterback throws for like 5,000 yards, he has to have a minimum pass attempt number, right? We're going to play that sort of game with wins. Okay. So the Pirates have played 23 teams at least 20 times in their history. Got that?
Mm-hmm.
Against how many of those teams do they have a winning record?
So they've played how many? They've played 20 teams at least 23 times.
They've played 23 teams at least 20 times.
23. And how many do they have a winning record? Okay. I'm writing these down. One, two, three, four, five, six, 7, 8, 9, 10. I came up with Georgetown, Providence, Rutgers, St. Peter's, Wagner, St. Francis, DePaul, LIU, Iona, and another Big East team. I'll make it I know that Cuse
Well,
has
it's not how many. It's not the teams
a winning
themselves. How
record.
many teams?
I'm stuck between 13 and 14. I'll go with 14 teams.
Well, again, Matt, you are close. 14 teams. It is significant to this question because that's how many of the 23 teams you have a losing record
Wow.
against. Now, so 9 teams that Seton Hall has a winning record against. They are Xavier, Creighton, Army, Miami of Florida, not of Ohio, DePaul, St. Francis, Iona, St. Peter's, and Rutgers. The other 14 teams are Villanova, Georgetown, Providence, St. John's, Boston College, Connecticut, Syracuse, Pitt, Fordham, Marquette, Manhattan, West Virginia, Notre Dame, and Louisville.
See, Manhattan surprises me. Like, I wonder how, like, when Seton Hall played Manhattan the most. Like that, I mean, that wouldn't even make any sense in the past decade if Seton Hall had even lost to Manhattan. So it must have been. That's interesting.
Now, you've gotten 2 wrong already, but just so I control you even more, you're going to get the last 2 questions regardless, and you can't do anything about it because I'm the host, and I like to see you upset. Now, the third question, and I know you're going to get at least one of these right. You still have that assist to use as well, so if you need it, you can use it.
Mm-hmm.
There have been 4 players in Seton Hall history that have been consensus All-America selections as defined by the NCAA. Who are they, and what year were they selected?
4 consensus All-Americans. Does that mean they have to be a first team?
No.
Who are they and what
One
year?
of these was a second team. Who are they and what year? This was from sportsreference.com.
See, I hate these
And I
questions.
trust it.
It's like I feel like I know the players, but like there's no like you have to get these 100% of the way to even get the point. Like that first question, I got half of it, but I don't even get half the point.
Well, what was the question? Who had the most wins? Who did you have the most wins against? Who did you have the most losses against?
That was probably
You
the
got
easiest
half of
question.
it wrong. We don't deal in 50% here, Matt. You, of all people, know 50% is a failing grade.
Gosh,
Do you want me to take the years out? Like, if you get the players right, I give you the point. Will that make you happy?
maybe.
If you get the years right, I will give you a bonus point. So you'll get 2.
Okay. I think I have 3 of these players. Miles Powell, 2020.
That's correct.
Angel Delgado, 2018.
And you're done.
2017.
Angel Delgado was not a consensus All-America selection.
Can we talk then how he wasn't? How do you win the Kareem Abdul-Jabbar Award for the best center in the nation and not win an All-American selection?
I'm going to pull up my source material right here real quick. Give me 1 second.
No, you're probably right.
Sportsreference.com, CBB, search Seton Hall. Go to history.
That's just crazy to me.
All-America. And there it is. Yes, consensus All-America selections is defined by the NCAA. Would you like to know who they are?
Well, in that, I do want to know who the 2018 winners were. I'll tell you my
2018 All-America team winners?
Yeah. I want to see who won. Like, how do you win the best center in the country but not be an All-American? Like, that doesn't even add up. The NCAA is getting stuff wrong.
Right. Okay. Well, the consensus first team was DeAndre Ayton, Marvin Bagley III, Jalen Brunson, Devontae Graham, and Trae Young.
And I can't argue with those.
Consensus second team, Keita Bates-Diop, Trevon Blewett, Miles Bridges, Javon Carter, Keenan Evans, and Jock Landale.
See, that's just wild. Like, that doesn't make any sense to me.
It makes plenty of sense to me because you were wrong and I was right. As for the 4 Seton Hall,
well, here, my other 2, and I know one of these is wrong. I had Terry DeHare, and I had Pep Saul, but I know Pep Saul is incorrect.
Well, Terry DeHare is correct in 1993. He was
and I had 93. Okay.
Yep. Walter Dukes
Yep,
was
Walter
voted
Dukes.
All-American in 1953. Bob Davies in 1942.
Yep.
So again, you got halfway there, but halfway just isn't enough in this game, Matt. 0 for 3. God, I love this job. We'll head to our 4-point play, and since I know you're not going to get this right, I'm going to make it worth 4 points just to make you even madderly. It's going to be great. You need to name the top 5 scorers in Seton Hall history.
The top 5 scorers in Seton Hall history.
Yeah, do you have a question to ask me about that? Seems like a very general question, Matt.
I got 1, 2.
Matt, I don't think you understand this question.
What do you mean?
I didn't tell you if you're looking for career scores in a season,
Finish the
single
question.
game. Well, Matt, I'm very glad that you asked, like, which one. So you need to start by telling me the top 5 Seton Hall players in career scoring.
Mm-hmm.
Then you need to tell me the top 5 Seton Hall Pirates in terms of season scoring. And then you need to tell me the top 5 single game scorers in Seton Hall history.
When you mean season scoring, this season or a single season?
A single season.
Can I take a true false on this?
No, you cannot.
Well, the top 5 career, Terry DeHare, Miles Powell.
That's incorrect.
What? Do I have to
Miles
name
Powell was 3rd on the list.
You never said I had to name it in order. You never said I had to name it in order.
That was the next part, actually. I have it written down here. You do need to do it in order. You didn't let me finish. Like,
I'm getting upset because you're making rules as we're going along.
I had this written down before we started. You're the one who showed up half an hour late.
It's DeHare. Okay, it's DeHare first. It's Jeremy Hazel is second.
That is incorrect.
Then you can just give me the answers. Because this is
I love it when Matt gets upset. Well, do you want to? Okay, so you didn't get the career scorers. That was Terry DeHare, Nick Workman, Miles Powell was 3rd, Jeremy Hazel was 4th, and Greg Tynes was 5th. Would you like to try your hand at the season scores?
No. I mean, Powell's got to be up there in one of the top 5.
Well, he was in the top 5 career scoring, yeah, but like you got to do them in order. I am telling you, I had this typed out and you started before I could finish.
I'll just say Powell 1, DeHare 2.
It's incorrect.
Just tell me the answers. I'm done
It's
with
also incorrect. Walter Dukes was 1st. Nick Workman holds the number 2 and 3 spot in that category. Miles Powell 4th, Terry DeHare 5th. And as for the single game scoring, because I know you're not going to want to try that because you'll get mad at me again. We still have one block to go.
Can you name me the points that they scored in order? And I'll try to give you this.
52, 49, 48, 47, and 47 again.
Well, I ain't getting that because the only 2 I remember were Kadeem Carrington's 41 against Creighton and Miles Powell's 40 against Grand Canyon. But I believe 50.
Well, that just means you're not that big of a Seton Hall fan, even though you went there.
52 was Nick Workman.
That is correct.
Okay. 49 is. You can give me the rest. I ain't getting the rest of those.
49 is also Nick Workman. 48 is Nick Gallis or Galise. I don't know. 47 DeJuan Scott and 47 Les Freeze. So unfortunately for you, but fortunately for me, my prediction became reality. You didn't get anything right. And maybe next time we'll do Syracuse basketball and I'll make the questions even harder so you still don't get any of them right. And you won't cut me off so I can't finish the rules and you yell at me about not telling you all the rules because you wouldn't let me finish. Don't look smugly off to the side at whoever's in your apartment with you. Don't even look down. Like, I know you're in shame right now, but we got to go to a break. And when we come back, we'll have Matt Mlodzinski's stories to start your college basketball week. I can't wait for that segment, along with his game picks. And I'll give him the final word on this episode, too, because he looks heated right now, and we have class together in 2 hours. We'll go ahead and take a break, though. This is the review. We'll be right back. Back here on the review, it's the D block, and there are plenty of words that I think Matt wants to call me that start with D as this block starts after his very poor performance in our trivia segment today. But I'm not going to let him do that because technically you can't do that because of the FCC. I actually don't know if that's a thing with YouTube videos. Anyway, though, we'll hit the ground running here in this final block of this Monday edition of the review with Matt Mlodzinski's stories to start your week.
Yeah, I think the stories to start this week are the fact that conference championships open up mid-major teams. You've got the Horizon League starting up. The America East regular season is all finished. So we're kind of going into that final 2 weeks where the power conference teams try to solidify their resumes and the mid-major teams now are in the national eye. I do love conference championship week. I consider it starting now. I know a lot of people don't consider it starting until the power conferences start, but sometimes these mid-major ones can be even more exciting because these teams don't always get the chances.
Well, those are Matt Mlodzinski's stories to start your college basketball week. We'll move on to the final segment of this Monday edition of the review. Game picks. We've talked about a lot of teams today, and a lot of them have picks that we have to make for the last regular season picks, first of all, of the season. So congratulations, everybody. I'm not sure what the percentages were on who was right and who was wrong because we didn't keep track of that. Maybe we'll do a picks game next season as well. We're going to go ahead and start in the Pac-12, though. USC taking on Oregon.
This one, I actually can't wait for 9 p.m. tonight. I got Oregon in it. I know that USC with Evan Mobley could be tough down low, but Oregon has one of the strongest tandems down low. I think that their guards also, I don't know the official stat on this, some of the biggest guards in the nation, and they're one of the hottest teams in the country. So I've got Oregon. And I also would like to note that if I have a Final Four team outside of the top 25 right now, Oregon's my pick.
Oh, okay. Interesting. Haven't been to the Final Four since 16, 17?
Mm-hmm.
Was it 16 or 17?
I believe it was 16.
Freshman year. Oh boy.
Yeah.
Our next game, the Fighting Cade Cunninghams, the Oklahoma State Cowboys, taking on the player that Matt likes to hate most, Mac McClung, and the Texas Tech Red Raiders.
I think Texas Tech knows what's at stake for this one. I think Oklahoma State's been playing better, but I'm going to take Texas Tech in this one.
All right, we'll move through these next few a bit quicker. Ohio taking on Akron in the battle for, I don't know what Ohio's state name is. Like Missouri's the Show Me State. Ohio's probably I don't know what it is. Ohio Bobcats, Akron Zips.
Yeah, Akron, shout out Lauren Christian Jackson. We've done some interviews with him here on CBB Review. He's one of the leading assist men in the country. He's a big scorer too. And for that reason, I'm going with the Zips.
Big matchup in the A-10, VCU against St. Louis.
Gosh, man, St. Louis has been one of my picks all season long, but VCU, I just got to ride the Rams. They've been playing so great as of late. I think the winner of this is feeling pretty good, and the loser, especially if it's St. Louis, if they haven't played the same amount of games as some of these other teams, if they drop to 11-5, they're going to be holding on to that last breath.
All right, we'll slow down a bit now. So another big game in the Big 12, and it seems like we say that pretty much every episode because everyone in the Big 12 except TCU and Iowa State, shout out Cyclones, you're 1 in 16 as we sit here recording today or something like that. Ariel Putterman said that would be a big game for Kansas, the fact they get to play Iowa State. He said that. Not for didn't say it's a big game. They play Iowa State. He's it's huge. They get to play them. And I was yeah, because they're terrible. Iowa State went from top class in the Big 12 to cellar dweller.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what happened, but they're not playing in this game because we never put them in the big segments because they're very bad. Texas, though, not very bad. They're really good. So is Kansas.
Excuse me, hold on. I missed that first team in the game.
Texas
and Kansas. I thought you said Texas Tech at first. Yeah, no, that's also a really big time game. Oh, man, this is actually a total toss-up. I'll go Texas. I know they've really been struggling. Kansas has strung a couple of wins against sort of semi-mediocre teams, but I'll go with the Longhorns.
We'll move on to the Big East, which Matt knows little to nothing about, as we just found out a few minutes ago. Villanova taking on St. John's. You probably know what's going to happen in this one.
Oh yeah, I mean St. John's has been playing well, but you just got to take the Wildcats. The only team that I could even pick against Villanova at this point in the season would be Creighton.
We head to the Southland now. Abilene Christian. We haven't talked about them at all, so congratulations on your debut on CBB Review. It only took you to the last episode of the regular season picks to get your name in there. They're taking on Sam Houston State, both teams 10-1 in the Southland, and both teams towards the top in their conference as well. This is a game that could really help one of these teams out when it comes to conference tournament seeding and having an easier path to the automatic bid out of the Southland. But who wins it?
I have Sam Houston State as my automatic qualifier out of this conference at the moment. I know Avalon Christian with the 18-3 overall better record than Sam Houston State, I believe, is 16-6, but I'm running with SHSU.
All right, so we'll head into. I'm gonna coin this right now, and it wasn't really coined by me because there are plenty of these throughout the history of basketball in general. Here are big three games to pick, and these are three very, very important games. In each of three of the top conferences in the country. We'll start in the SEC. Arkansas and Alabama, same exact record. Which it was interesting to me when you said earlier that Arkansas has been like they didn't play well to start the season. They are another team like in Illinois who's been flying under the radar a lot this year. They're 17-5 and 12-1 in the SEC. Alabama 17-5, 12-1 in the SEC. It's a real. You hear about 6-pointers in soccer. This is a real two-gamer for both of these teams. If you win it, I think you're pretty much solidified as the number one seed in the SEC tournament.
Yeah, I'm going with Alabama in this one. Just their guard play has been too much.
Next up, out of the Big 12, Baylor, one of only two undefeated teams left in the country. They're playing against a West Virginia team that predicates itself on defense. I think this game's going to be a little bit closer than everybody may predict right away. They may think, oh, Baylor's undefeated. They'll take care of business like they always do. But will they against the Mountaineers team coached by the man, the myth, the legend, your favorite coach? Maybe, I don't know, Huggy Bear.
I think that it's so easy to pick Baylor each game, and 90% of people will pick Baylor each game at this point in the season. So why not just throw out West Virginia there? I think if there's a team that could beat Baylor, they'd have the best shot at doing it.
And then finally, out of the Big Ten, they had a big win this weekend. They have another big game this week against Iowa. The Michigan Wolverines, Juwan Howard, ever since that first half against Wisconsin, has had his team playing really well offensively. And really, that's all you need. If you can score more points than the other team, you're golden. But they take on an Iowa team, again, that has Luka Garza. That's an offensive powerhouse in their own right. We'll see plenty of fireworks in this game as well, but who ends up on top?
I think Luka Garza is getting a little bit tired about maybe not he got a lot of press in the first month of the season, and now that the Big Ten's been so good, you haven't heard as much about Garza, and I could see him coming out and playing real well and winning this game.
Well, those are our picks for the week. We'll go ahead and close up shop now. And really the only thing we have to say to close up shop today is thank you, Matt, for embarrassing yourself in the three-point play today. I know it wasn't your number one team to watch, but hey, your number two team, you should know at least a little bit about it. So thank you for coming on. Do you have any final words before I tease Friday's episode?
No, just excited for this Cuse Duke game tonight, and it's college basketball, baby.
He's so mad. He won't even acknowledge it. We'll go ahead and tease Friday's episode. Like I said, this was our last regular season pick segment, which basically means it was our last kind of regular season episode. That we'll talk we'll obviously talk about the Power Five if anything big happens in there and different stories. But conference championships start next week. We'll be previewing those starting on Friday. I'm hoping we can get Matt Waldman on here to talk a little bit about the mid-major tournaments going on. And we'll be covering postseason play from now on, guys. You'll be seeing episodes like these on Mondays and Fridays. You'll be seeing hopefully live stuff in the mornings and evenings of each tournament day. Not for the conference tournament because that'd be way too much, but for the NCAA tournament at least. And yeah, well, we'll have all that for you here on CBB Review. Thanks for joining us here. This has been episode 18 of the review for Matt Mlodzinski. I'm Brendon Hodges. Have a great rest of your day. Stay safe if the weather's as bad where you are as it is here, as snow is like swirling in 20 different directions as I look out the window. But yeah, enjoy your week, enjoy some college basketball, and we'll see you guys on Friday.